Welcome to a very special time. We have two guests with us today. Jack Robertson is with the Thomas Jefferson Foundation, librarian with that organization, and his good friend Bud Leeds, who has been with us before. Bud is going to provide for us a musical introduction to this experience, and he will tell you some background on that.
Well, the musical theme to open Jack Robertson's topic of pursuit of peace, the music for that grew out of at least two versions of Ave Maria and blended with years later with Johann Sebastian Bach, and much later with Jerome Kern. And I think you'll recognize some of the themes in it.
All right, we will be your audience to sit and listen. you, Bud. Jack, when Bud introduced that beautiful music, he said it was in connection with the presentation you did around peace. Would you like to tell us about that?
Yes, I would. I was very grateful to be invited to speak at the All Souls gathering place in Shelburne, and the date was Armistice Day, Veterans Day, and so in talking with people, dear friends, old and new, I wanted to talk about Thomas Jefferson, and so Jefferson's pursuit of happiness cropped up, and so we just modified it to pursuit of peace. And I have been thinking a good deal. I mean, Bud has been great at stirring me to think and react and respond to spiritual ideas and real life ideas to make some sense out of the pursuit of peace. What does that mean for me? And so I actually created a diamond of knowing, a visualization of what I see as the key points, the key elements in my own spiritual development and in my own learning to know about myself and my sensibilities. And so coming to Vermont is a great joy for me, and so I always add days, and that's why I happen to be here with you on this snowy Tuesday.
That's nice.
So
tell us about the Diamond of Peace.
the Diamond of Knowing is, I actually have well, this is sort of a modified version. There are, the top point is mystery, and the two side points are action and contemplation, and the bottom point is enlightenment. And then around those nodes I bring in, and most importantly, at the middle is love. And so love is the crux of the matter, and as I know Bud operates this way, I'm more and more talking to people that are interested in sharing a peaceful, loving life and learning to abide and be serene. And so that's it in a nutshell. I mean, I have a script here if you want me to read it, but I don't. I know you don't. So that's that. Does that get at what you're wondering?
Yes, yeah, it does. This comes out of your work with Thomas Jefferson, or
It does. It comes out of any number of things. One of my many little sheets here, I've started listing the sources, the inspirations for how I have come to be the person that I am. And so Thomas Jefferson, of course, figures. I've been at Thomas Jefferson's home, Monticello, for 20 years. I was there at the beginning when a research library was created, and so imagining and planning and then implementing and then producing out of the legacy of Thomas Jefferson's ideas and activities has been an integral part of my life for 20 years. And I see him as a great man, a great influence. I mean, he was very conflicted and contradictory, but I mean, he was an optimist. He believed that people could, with education and with the options and the opportunities, people could govern themselves. And I think we kind of know what he did, along with his his co-founders of this amazing country. And so he was a great believer in education. He was also a very spiritual man. He did not. He did not like the formal, traditional, doctrinal religions. He went straight to the moral philosophy of Jesus, and from that he derived his own sense of the way that Jesus lived and taught. That's a way for himself, for Jefferson. And so I too, I mean, it's kind of amazing, isn't it, how we go through ages and we go through the same kinds of conflicts and learning, and we come back to the core of the matter. How many times does the word love show up in the Bible? You should know that. So,
I would be faking it if I told you a number.
so Jefferson, one of these days I'll just start confusing Jefferson and Jesus, but I mean, oops, I lost my thingy. Does this work? Shall I just hold it and
Why don't you just hold it? Yeah, I think. And Bud, you want to get into this conversation while we're?
Indeed. Jack and I have talked a lot right here in this town, as a matter of fact, many conversations about how it seems to me the more scientists discover in light of that new information, the stories in the Bible, even those that could be labeled now as kind of short homilies or metaphorically would be the more you know, the more awesome the whole business of why is there something instead of nothing. And then all the questions that go along with that. Scientists, I think, in many respects, are the most much more in awe of everything than some other people with the simpler religions. It's that you don't have to draw a line between the two.
So Bud and I did have ongoing conversations, and he spurred me into thinking about the interconnection between science and religion, and then I'm inclined to map out, to make visual the ideas that I am learning and hearing and creating, and so I actually created a chart about the interconnection between science and religion. And this is really for myself. I mean, I share it with others, and again, it's a matter of using words to symbolize larger things, concepts and constructs and movement through time and so on. But I actually created this. Well, never mind. That's a long story. But
Okay.
So,
What would be the top two things on your list? Right up
well,
the top of the page.
I'll not answer your question, but I will.
That's all right.
At the base level is science, and that's the elements, the core, the primal pieces of science. So iron, gold, plutonium, 94 natural and 24 synthetic. That's the core of science. That's the core of the world. And then it goes up and at the top is essence, and I add words to clarify transcendence, immaterial, all-knowing, and then more, omniscience and omnipresent, and the mysterious. I mean, again, the top point of my diamond of knowing is mystery. We simply cannot know in the sense of measuring and taking photographs. we can only feel and experience and have faith that there is a higher power. So that's a brief explanation. I wish this could be depicted. I mean, it can be done, but I can't do it as a helical spiral where everything is connected and one thing leads to another, and without any one level or any piece, it doesn't make sense. You know, it's not a complete whole.
What do people say to you when you enter into that conversation?
They're receptive. They listen to me. I'm a good listener, so I tend to listen first, and then add a word or a question. I'm a good listener and a good questioner. Those are the basic tricks of the trade for librarians. I don't let on that I know anything. I just people ask me something and I say, well, do you mean this? And so I talk to. I mean, this actually came into existence because a very dear man in my life said, "Oh, I'm an atheist," and I said, "What? You don't believe in anything?" And he said, "I believe in science." And so that got me started thinking, well, science, and of course, it wasn't Bud, but it was someone else who was more sort of hardcore, almost not offensively, but aggressively atheist, and that's fine. That's fine. I have certain things that I bring into a conversation like that. I say, are you ever in awe? Is there a time when something is beyond your measurable, rational?
Is that an easy question or a hard question for people when you ask them that?
It takes them aback, especially if they have already established themselves as non-believers and completely unspiritual. My belief is that there is the mystery in every person. They just don't know it, or they deny it, or they don't yet see how it has any reason for them in their lives. And so, talking about awe or the mystery or magic, you know, what did you feel? Sorry, I'm buzzed. My phone is buzzing here, so I hope it's not going into the so. Anyway,
maybe you're getting a call.
Yeah, I'm getting a so,
Well, it's happened in stranger
my
places.
call is coming in. So, and more and more, I mean, I don't stand on a street corner and start preaching, or it's usually in social settings. You know, I do most of my best business in downtown Charlottesville having lunch, and so, you know, sometimes we meander, and I'm more easily prone to bring up these kinds of ideas. And people are not, they don't shut me up or simply not respond. So
So there is a desire and a willingness to engage in this conversation.
there is.
That when you is that true for you, Bud?
Yes, especially recently, we've been talking about presidential leadership, and I would just mention something that Jack won't tell you, but I'll tell you about him. He's not only the librarian at Monticello, but he gets called frequently to serve as a consultant to other presidential libraries. So I'm very interested in what are some of the leadership qualities that we want, and why was it structured the way it was, our government, with the three branches. You're just asking for disagreement and confrontation and that sort of thing with the judicial, legislative, and executive branch, and when one steps over the line, you look at it and say, well, why did the founding fathers even set it up this way? And I think there was a dynamic there, and I think that certainly Jefferson and Madison and then some of the other Hamilton and Benjamin Franklin, they were all Newtonian thinkers in the way they looked at things, the dynamics of that, and they structured the government accordingly. At least that's my misimpression. How would you correct that? You're good at passing information from generation to generation.
No, Bud and I have marvelous talks because he's full of ideas, and am I, and we sort of prod and poke each other into. I think the founders were exactly as you say. They were also not doctrinaire or dogmatic, and they created a living, working document so that people could rule themselves with equity and justice. And I think they believed in change, in flow. They were not writing the rule book for the United States of America. And so interpretation and people change and conditions change, and Jefferson in particular, but all of them believed in education. And so educating people was the primary step in making the Constitution and the country work. One of my favorite Jefferson quotes is, "Enlighten the people generally, and tyranny and oppression of body and mind will vanish like evil spirits at the dawn of day." Isn't that poetic?
That's
but
very
I mean, it's
poetic,
also
yeah.
just sort of a summation of his belief in education. I mean, enlighten the people generally, enlighten all people, enlighten, educate people in all things, and then the mechanism will, we don't know where it will go. It's just that it will go. It will run and change, and so I've actually used that title as the that quote as the title of a project that we've done at the Jefferson Library at Monticello, and that is the Enlighten the People project, in which we take publicly available information resources that are reliable and rich and relevant to anyone's need to know, to pursue a line of inquiry. And with certain knowledge, certain techniques, these sources can be delved into and mined, and out of these, again, free, I mean, the Library of Congress and the National Archives and the teachers and scholars and students and parents may bring out of this vast, I mean, this incredible universe of information on the internet, bring out of that material that is on target, is useful and reliable for use by students or reading groups. I mean, this is a universal application. So it hasn't taken off very much yet, but I have hopes.
But it has a solid framework.
Oh yeah, oh yeah. Yeah.
You talk about religion and about science. Both of you have spoken about that. When are those topics when people come to visit you in the library? Are those topics that people come looking for information, additional information on?
Yes.
Can you say a little bit about that?
The scope of the Jefferson Library, and in fact Monticello, is Jefferson's life and times and legacy.
Okay.
And that makes us universal. I mean, anything that has any connection with Jefferson, even his antecedents, the ideas that came out of the classical world and the architectural styles out of the Renaissance are absolutely what people are interested in. And the legacy part is what has happened with Jefferson's and the founders' ideas in the 19th and 20th and 21st centuries, and how are we to make sense of the books that Jefferson owned and read and knew, and the letters, the 25,000 letters that he wrote. He was actually the president of the American Philosophical Society for 18 years. So he was connected to the world's knowledge base in the 18th and 19th century. So almost anything goes. I like to tell people when I have a chance to use, for example, our online catalog. We call it the Thomas Jefferson Portal. Go in and play around. See if you can find anything that doesn't have some connection to Jefferson. And so we support scholars who come and spend a month or two at the library, and their topics are widely ranging and varied, which is part of what I like. We're not, it's one man, but that man is a universal man. And so music and agronomy and viticulture, and that's that's winemaking, and it was all important,
Okay. We have a few more minutes, so let me just see if there are some specific things you'd like to include. And it's been very helpful to see Jefferson in that broader context, and both in terms of your interest in religion and politics, and I shared that with you. And we've got some not so clear thinking about both religion and science in these days, and it's helpful to be able to be involved with someone who's done a lot of thinking about the issues of humanity and as broadly as Thomas Jefferson. So I really appreciate that. But so let me see.
He's looking at you.
Well, one thing there was one thing, probably more than one thing, but one thing that I think of in common at Stanford, where I was writing something called calculus books, and then the teachers that we were teaching at Kurukshetra University and Banaras Hindu University in India. Now these are pretty, you would think, diverse, but the one book was fluxions, and that was what Newton called his calculus book. And he talked about the dynamics of the whole thing a little earlier.
So let's hear also from you at that point.
I think that the issue of Jefferson as optimist is, at the moment for me, very, very lovely, very rewarding. A man who went through, he had so many children, he was married only once, but he had so many deaths in his life. And he tried and failed at so much government leadership, and he accomplished so much, and yet he failed, so to speak, and yet he was always seeing the possibilities and the hope and the promise for people to live and work and create in my way of thinking, in an open and loving way.
Thank you both very much. This encourages, I trust people to be mindful of Jefferson and to come to Monticello and visit you there, and to keep mindful of the kind of issues that we've raised. There's so many more that we could do, but we find ourselves out of time at this point.
Well, I come back to Vermont whenever I can, so you.
All right, please do this. You're always welcome at this table.
Okay.
Thank you, Len.
Thank
Yes,
you.
thank
All right. Thank you, folks, for sitting in and being part of this today.